Can always stop it though.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today has a brand new book on. It is called Body on Fire, the anti-inflammatory. Is it anti-inflammatory? And I can't speak.
Sure.
What do you expect? Anti-inflammatory cookbook. It talks about the power of foods to restore your health, and it's written by Dr. Monica Aggarwal and Dr. Jyothi Rao. They've both been on the show before with the book from which this was inspired, which is called Body on Fire, which is also a must read. And I'll put the link below in the chat in the show notes. And she's actually going to prepare a recipe from the book today. She's going to make a vegan Caesar salad. Please welcome her to the show. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Was it fun to write a cookbook?
It took a lot out of me because I am not naturally, like, I cook based on I'm an Indian. I grew up in an Indian household, and my mom says you cook with andaza. Andaza means like estimation. Like you're like, oh, a little of this, a little of that, then you taste it, then you adjust it. And so it was hard. So, we had a recipe creator that helped us because I struggled for sure with, I said, I want to make this recipe, but me putting the bread, like, well, how much do you put in this? How much? So that it was definitely a challenge, and one that grew me a lot. But I've learned so much. And the best part to me of the cookbook is actually the beginning of the book, because we really talk the advice or recommendations after people had read the original book, Body on Fire, was they had said to me, I love the book. It's really good. It's taught me so much, but how do I actually start? Which was interesting feedback. And so what we did in the cookbook is the beginning, we went through and said, okay, this is what we want you to do on day one. This is what's for breakfast. This is what's for lunch. This is what's for dinner. And we really tried to give people a very clear breakfast, lunch, dinner option so they knew how to start. And then we tried to make lists and sort of make it simple for people like myself who would want to say, okay, well, I have a problem with my calcium levels, or I've been told I really need to boost up my iron. Well, these are the foods that I should be adding for more iron, or these are the foods that are more anti-inflammatory because I have autoimmune disease, or this is because I have a high cholesterol. I really need to focus on eating less fats or saturated fats. This is what I would focus on. So we tried to do it, tried to make it sort of as user-friendly as we could. And the recipes are also really simple. And I'm just not, I really think that simple cooking is the best in the sense that I have 3 kids. I'm always running around working a lot, and I want to eat wholesome, healthy foods, but I want them to be easy. I don't want 50 ingredients and things I have to go to a random grocery store that it's really hard to find. We tried to make things mainstream and things that we would normally get at a regular grocery store.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Well, the recipes look amazing. This is the one I want to try.
Yeah, I love that. That's really a fabulous recipe, is the stir-fried udon noodles. I chose to do when we make the recipe, I chose to do a dressing because I wanted to just remind people that, for lunch every day, I think that everybody should be eating a massive salad. That's the thing I recommend in general is people call it the Aggarwal salad. It should be bigger than your head, and it should be full of dark green leafy vegetables. And so to remind people at lunchtime, we want to be eating that big green salad. And sometimes it's just as easy as adding a really neat dressing to make that green salad a little different and interesting for that day or for that week. And so sometimes that's really fun.
Who's your friend?
Oh, you saw that's Hamilton. So I have 2 rescue pups. One is Isabel, and we call her Izzy, and one is Hamilton, who we call Hammy, which is funny because none of us in our house eat meat. And so Hammy is also a rescue. And we had a lot of debate. We'd all loved the Hamilton play. And so there was a lot of discussion on, some people wanted to name him Hercules Mulligan, and some people wanted to name him Burr. But we had a big discussion about how my 11-year-old wanted to name him Burr because she liked the name. And I was like, oh, no, we can't name him Burr because Burr was on the wrong side.
That is so adorable. Thank you for rescuing your pets. If you want, also, I'm in the process of moving, so my books are packed, but I have your first book, which is great. And maybe talk a little bit about the premise of the first book, how you came to be so, interested in food as medicine.
Oh, thank you. So, medicine, I've been a physician and a cardiologist now for about 12 to 15 years now. I sort of forget the number every time. So somewhere in that range. And over that course, I'm Indian. So I grew up always with an interest in food. I grew up with my mom saying, eat more turmeric, eat more turmeric. So that's always sort of been part of my life. But, I spent time doing integrative work and Ayurvedic work when I was in college and in medical school. And a random fact is I was a religion major in college. So it's sort of always been interested in sort of maybe Eastern religions. I focused on Buddhism, just Eastern cultures have been an interest. But it was only when I got sick, after I had my third child, I developed a debilitating form of rheumatoid arthritis. So I went from being this active runner and very active physician to being completely immobile. It's a hard part of my life. So where I could describe how I used to crawl up the stairs because I just couldn't get up the steps. Just sort of dark time in my life. And it was at that point when I was told that I had an incurable illness, that I need to get just used to taking medications, that it doesn't matter, that that you just have to accept it. Those kind of comments from my doctors, that you just have to accept that you have an illness, that you won't get off medications. It's when you are humbled to that point, and when you ask for options of, well, what about other options, and people don't have any for you, and the doctors say, well, there are no other options. This is that you start. It breaks you, it changes you, it makes you think, especially a person like me who couldn't accept that I had an illness that I couldn't fix. So it sent me down this path of trying to learn about nutrition and lifestyle. By happenstance, I met a woman who actually came to me and said, like, she was like my God's gift, because she came to me and she said, let me talk to you about nutrition. I'd like to talk to you and talk to your patients about nutrition. And I said, well, I do a pretty good job of that. Probably was more obnoxious than I should have been. And she said, you know what, why don't you just let me do your profile? And I thought, I'm really healthy. I know what I'm doing. How funny and how ironic and how pretentious I was, because I was a physician with an illness and who thought I was so healthy. And she was the first person who made me start thinking about nutrition and its impact on how on your body. And it sent me down this education pathway where I started learning about not only nutrition, which was a huge part of it, but also just your lifestyle, about stress and about inflammation and about the impact of sleep and lack of sleep, the impact of stress and how to calm your mind with mind-body techniques, and about, of course, about nutrition, which is a huge part of that. And so I spent years sort of learning that, and then decided that I was tired of being the guy or gal who gave out all the statin medications, or telling people that it was okay to just give out a statin, or to recommend somebody needed a stent for their heart disease or bypass surgery. And I wanted to sort of be more empowered. So I started changing my practice of medicine to focus more on how to heal the illness before people got sick, or if they did get sick, how to then prevent them from getting worse. And it changed everything. So we wrote the book Body on Fire. We call it Body on Fire because it's about inflammation. So Body on Fire is your body's mad at you. And inflammation is arguably the center of all illness. And if you treat inflammation, you treat yourself and combat your risks for all illnesses. And so we called it that. But we wrote that book really to honor my daughter, because my daughter, my third child, who's now 11, at the time, I blamed her. Embarrassingly so, I blamed her and my pregnancy for being the reason I got sick. And it's to honor her because she's the one. If it wasn't for my life at that time and that process and going through the sickness that I would have learned, it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have healed. I wouldn't have learned how to heal, how to get better, and it really changed my entire life. So Body on Fire is an honor to her and a tribute to her. And it talks all about the lifestyle tools to heal your body. And I encourage everybody to read it. Don't have to buy it. You can get it from the library. I don't care. Just read it and try to learn about tools, because there's so much you can do to heal your body. And there's so much you can do. There's so much data out there that doctors don't talk about, and you can empower yourself and have control. And I think that's the thing that we hate the most as humans, is the lack of control. I certainly, as somebody who got sick, I think that was the thing I hated the most, is feeling that small person in the wheelchair, and just feeling like I had no control. And I think that those tools that we provide are to give people that control back. And it's not always perfect. Not everybody's going to cure their illness, but they're sure going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got some really wonderful people endorsing this book, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr., Dr. Dean Ornish. So that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. How long did it take for you? Would you say that your disease is reversed? Is it managed? What is the best terminology to use?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've reflected on this question a lot because rheumatoid arthritis is an incurable illness by all disease experts. If you look at my markers, my inflammatory markers are flat, but for 10 years, so the part of the story that not everybody knows is that so for 10 years now, I guess, or 9.5 years, I have been off of all medications. I take no medications for rheumatoid arthritis, and I've had no symptoms. Interestingly, after I got COVID last year and the vaccine, I did develop a flare, which I have not had in 10 years. And I think it was related to either COVID or COVID plus vaccine. Not because the vaccine is bad. I encourage and promote the vaccine, but vaccine, COVID itself is immunogenic, meaning it can trigger inflammation. And so I think that's what triggered the illness. And it was a reminder to me that I probably will always have rheumatoid arthritis. It's not something that I'll probably ever be cured of. And if you look at my genetic markers, my rheumatoid factor and my anti-CCP antibody, they are still elevated, but my inflammatory markers are not elevated, and I am completely symptom free again. And so I think that sometimes we're looking for perfection, and we don't want to let perfection be the enemy of good enough. And I am really good enough, and I feel great, and I go for runs, and I feel great. I don't take medications, and I'm the best that I want to be. And I think we all have room for improvement. I'd like to exercise a little more, maybe sleep a little bit more, meditate a little bit more, but I'm in a good space, and I'm proud of that.
That's fantastic. Does your entire family eat this way? Your husband, your three children?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when I went plant-based, I'm the cook, and moms are often the cook, and I also do all the grocery shopping. So my house, my husband grew up eating, they would kill cow, and they would bring home they had something called cow day, or I can't remember, beef day. And that's how he grew up eating those kind of foods. And when I went plant-based, he just kind of watched. And I'm not the type of person to say this is how it's going to be, not with my kids, not with anyone. And they just watched me. And what ended up happening, which has been so interesting, is that he slowly and slowly also became plant-based. Once in a while, he still eats a little bit of fish, I've noticed, but I say nothing. But in general, he's almost 100% plant-based. And what's been neat about my kids is that I raised them completely plant-based from birth, and no milk, no cow's milk. But, when they go out, I would tell them, we can eat whatever you want. And I will say nothing. And they knew that. And so sometimes they would eat things like chicken tenders or ice cream, and I would say nothing. And what's interesting and what's happened, and it's evolved on their own, and it's been so beautiful, because at home we eat plant-based and we eat what we eat. And when they'd go out, they would just say, like, this is what everybody else eats. This is what they want to eat. And as they've gotten a little bit older, they all identify themselves as vegan. And they all say that I hear them tell their friends, well, I choose not to eat animals, or I don't want to eat those kind of foods. And they walk into school. My 7th grader walks in with spinach, and the principal stopped her the other day and was like, "You're eating raw spinach?" And she's like, "Yes, it's really good. You should try it." I was like, "You go, girl." So they all identify as plant-based, which is really cool.
That is hilarious. When you think about diseases, many of them end in the word itis, the 4 letters. So isn't inflammation almost always the root cause of, I'm not talking somebody falls down and breaks a leg, but for especially any chronic disease?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's so obvious the way you said it, right? But it's something that we haven't fully understood until now, really, that inflammation is the source and cause of all illnesses. So it begets itself, right? So if you have an illness, that triggers inflammation. And if you have inflammation, that triggers the illness. And so the key to healing your body is to then treat not the inflammation, because if you treat the inflammation, then maybe you won't activate the gene that you already have. Like, you can't change your parents, you can't change your genetics, but you can change the milieu, the epigenetics, the things that are around the gene, so that maybe it won't express itself, or it won't express itself as much. And those are the things we can change. And we can change that by really just calming that inflammation. That is really the key to all illnesses, as you point out, heart disease, autoimmune disease, inflammatory bowel disease, asthma, all of these things. So when my son, when he was 8 or 9 years old, he started developing a little bit of allergies. We live in Florida, and he started developing allergies. So I compensated by adding loads of sauerkraut and things to nourish his gut biome, to kind of heal his gut flora. And that really helped his allergies. So there's so much you can do with your lifestyle and what you eat, to heal your body and just calm the inflammation.
Is there a hierarchy of inflammatory foods, like maybe animal products being the worst, then processed food? I'm just making this up, what I think it might be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you're always right on. Come on. So the reality is that the top two would be, in my mind, would be processed foods, refined foods, and red meat. I think are probably the top most potent inflammatory foods. And then sort of a soon right after is dairy. I think dairy is very potently inflammatory. And so those for me are sort of on the top of the no-go list. People say, well, what about poultry? Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of poultry. It is on the list, but it's probably not the very top. And then poultry, and then it would come down further down on the list, but certainly on the list as well. And one thing I'd like everybody to avoid poultry too, absolutely. But for me, the top worst items are red meat, processed and refined foods, and then right soon after is dairy.
And interestingly enough, most Americans eat more than 90% of their calories from both of those food groups.
It is incredible. There's so much we have to do. One of the things that I really make a point to do in my practice of medicine, and as I teach and educate and do these talks, is I really try to tell people not to focus so much on veganism or being whole food plant-based, as much as to focus on just eating more plants. Like, just eat more plants and cut out some of these, cut out these big ticket animal products, and then see the difference. And what I find that happens to people is that they're so happy with how they change and how good they feel, that more change happens over time. But if I focus on just telling people, just eat more plants and cut out some of those key negatives, just see the difference. And that's what I try to focus on, because I really just want to focus on, well, I am a whole food plant-based, and I believe in animal rights and all of these. I don't think that necessarily that's everybody's goal. And so if everybody's goal, though, everybody wants to feel good and heal their bodies. And so if you focus on that aspect, well, the way to do that is just eat more plants, cut out red meat, cut out dairy, cut out those refined and processed foods, and start there. It's a great place to start. Easy, right?
Right. It's easy, but people that are ethical vegans get upset with me for not being a fan of vegan processed food. And I don't think they realize maybe it's not quite as deleterious as red meat and dairy, but it's not health promoting either.
Well, that's exactly right. And I also have gotten in trouble with this group that you describe as well. It all depends again on your mission. If your mission is for the animals, then, eating anything that doesn't have an animal product is your goal, and that's your decision. But if you are focused on health, which is what I am focused on, then a lot of these plant-based vegan foods are unhealthy. I mean, people love the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Burger, and I'm not a fan. And I have written about it. We've published on this area. Because the Impossible Burger has almost as much fat as a steak, and so we just, Dean Ornish is working with Beyond Burger, I think, or I can't remember which one he's working with actually, but doctors are working with some of these companies to kind of reduce the amount of fat in those burgers, which should improve them over time. But right now, they're not things that I think as a physician, I can advocate. Now, with that in mind, are they a good stepping stone? Sure. They're a good stepping stone to learning different flavors and textures. But the problem I find is they've tried to make that meat so much like meat that I'm not sure that we're learning. It's not as much maybe as of a transition as I think there should be.
Right. People say, well, I make it, my diet's so restrictive. I make it so hard for people to eat vegan, but fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, avocado, there's 18,000 different kinds of legumes. How is it, restrictive? Because I don't care how hard it is I'm trying to make it easy for people to be healthy. And,
Right.
and I just find that, eating processed food, vegan or not, catches up with you. That was my story. That's how I got precancerous polyps in my colon. I was vegan for 26 years, junk food vegan. It didn't serve me at all.
Yeah. So I think that's really important thing you said. I often tell people that, saturated fat is bad, but those refined carbohydrates and instant processed foods are arguably worse. And so you just need to focus. Yes, it's white breads and, instant foods, maybe vegan, but they are certainly not healthy. And again, our goal is to eat as many plants as we can and try to learn that, people describe that there's a texture issue with foods and they don't like beans because of the texture. So that's why I like some of your recipes and unprocessed, which are so fabulous because you really work with texture. And I tell people, if you don't like the texture of beans, try pureed beans or blend the beans or eat hummuses. And people, oh, I hate the taste of hummus. Okay, well, try 7 different hummuses and put them on your table. And every day, try one bite of one of them and try to learn, because everything's about taste buds, isn't it? And your taste buds change every 7 years, actually. And it just takes time to sort of change and adapt. Is the same reason that I eat Indian food not like it's water, because I grew up eating that way because my taste buds are made to eat those kind of foods. But I didn't like Thai food when I first had it. But then over time, as my taste buds changed, now Thai food is my number one love is Thai food. So everybody's body can change. Everybody can change. It just takes the time and the diligence to want to make those changes. And it's all about what you're willing to do. For me, I never want to be sick again. I never want to feel sick. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to not be sick. And you just have to decide if that's worth it to you.
Absolutely. I think processed food is addictive, whether it's vegan or not. So that's, I think, why people struggle with the fact that they can't stop eating it or can't cut back.
Yeah. So then in those situations, when people are eating those processed foods, I often tell people, we'll start out with simple things like, okay, well, if you eat processed foods typically for lunch and dinner, why don't you start by having that big Aggarwal salad for lunch and then just have whatever you like to eat for dinner and just start there. Oatmeal for breakfast, maybe that big salad for lunch, and then that dinner, whatever you're used to eating. And then just do that for 2 or 3 weeks. And then what I have found over and over again is that people start feeling uncomfortable when they eat those processed foods, which is exactly what I want. And so they end up feeling like they start themselves going to those sort of wholesome foods. Like when I had my colonoscopy last week, I keep talking about this colonoscopy because I'm so blown away by it. I guess I shouldn't use that. It's probably a pun because I literally felt like I was blown out literally. But you have to eat all these processed foods. It's fascinating to me because I ate mac and cheese and pasta with red sauce, and I was thinking to all vegan, but all refined in junk food. Because remember, most pasta has 0 fiber. And so I was eating these foods and I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is so terrible. And you just feel yucky eating it. Like you eat it and then your stomach feels bad and you just don't want to eat those kind of foods. And the best thing that after my husband asked me, what's your favorite meal that you want to eat after your colonoscopy? And I was like, well, that's easy. I want whole grain toast with hummus, tomato, and black pepper. That's what I want. And that's what I had, 2 slices, and it was divine.
Oh, that's fantastic. I just saw a question from a live viewer named Isabel.
Oh, yeah.
I have rheumatoid arthritis, celiacs. I happily feel the benefits of plant-based, but what can I use to replace the benefits of bone broth? Are there really benefits of bone broth?
Yeah. So, some people think that there are benefits to bone broth. I'm not sure that you need bone broth. So it depends. I guess I would ask that person, why are you taking the bone broth? So there's a lot of people who think that it's high in protein. Some people think that it's anti-inflammatory. I haven't really found that there's a lot of data to support at least the latter. And so I don't take any, as a rheumatoid arthritis patient and somebody who advocates and works with rheumatoid patients, I don't recommend any kind of broths that are bone-based. I guess I would want to know if they respond, what they're using it for. There's so many nourishing ways to get healthy foods in your body without using bone broth. I mean, think about miso, think about tempeh, really high protein, high nutritious foods that are natural. Miso is a natural probiotic, so really good for your gut. I guess I want to hear more about why they felt they needed to take it in terms of benefits.
Yeah, that's good. Let's see if there's, I didn't realize you did telemedicine. Talk a little bit about that. How can people see you? Does it matter what state they live in?
Yeah. So thanks for asking. So, we've evolved so much over the last couple of years. I'm still on faculty at the University of Florida where I do my research. So I still have a great study going on plant-based nutrition and its impact in cardiovascular disease. I'm excited about. I also see patients clinically in Winter Park, Florida. So at the Advent Hospital Systems, I see patients in clinic, and that's a standard cardiology practice where I see patients for every 15 to 20 minutes. But because that's really doesn't sort of solve the significant void that is in medicine today, which is that nobody's really educating people the way I feel people need to be educated on in terms of nutrition and lifestyle. So I've added a telemedicine component to my practice. So I do telemedicine practice where I see patients for 60 to 70 minutes. They're all, at least all first visits are that long. I just don't feel like we do enough justice with shorter visits, or at least I don't feel like I can. So I do every visit's about 60 to 70 minutes long. And we talk about how to eat. We talk about recipes. We talk about, I just really get to know the patient. And it's been a really fun, exciting part of my practice and very fulfilling. I've had patients tell me that after they have an anxiety issue, and after talking to me, they just feel better. Like they know that they can get through this. They are doing better, and they know they can overcome. And that's really what I want to give people is hope. And something that was taken away from me as a patient is I want to give people hope. So I provide that telemedicine practice for that reason. And it's been really gratifying. Right now, I can only see patients in Maryland, Florida, and California, and any international patients. I can see anybody internationally. But I have still working on a few more licenses. I can only see patients where I'm licensed. And so I got to just get that next step to get a few more. I've been asked to do South Carolina. I've asked to do Tennessee. I've been asked to do New York, all of which I am working on and hope to have soon. To check back on the website for more details over the coming months.
That's fantastic. They're asking for clarification. Are you saying you had to eat processed vegan junk food right before the colonoscopy, or was that your previous diet? There's no way that was her previous diet. That's why she wrote Body on Fire. She eats whole plants.
No. So I'm a whole food. So let's be very clear. I eat a whole food plant-based diet. I'm a huge advocate of whole food plant-based. And that's how I eat. That's how I raise my family. That's how I raise my kids. And I'm working on my dogs actually. So before your colonoscopy, you can eat no fiber. So for the week before your colonoscopy, you have to eat a low fiber, low residue diet, which is I've reflected, and you might see it on my social media, where I talk about this terrible diet paper they give you before your colonoscopy that basically says, here are your choices, which is like fruit juices, pasta, red meat, dairy, and any sweet you want. You're like, wait, what? So like any of the foods that I eat, no. So for the week before your colonoscopy, and I outlined exactly what I ate in my social media, and I've been asked to put it on my website, which I will, which is I wrote down exactly what I ate for the 4 days prior, and I had 100% clean prep. So I know it was effective, but yes, you had to eat, in order to eat to get low fiber, you end up eating some processed foods. So I ate macaroni, I ate pasta and red sauce, I ate potatoes without the skin, I ate a lot of cantaloupe, because that's one of the fruits that you're allowed to eat is cantaloupe.
That's so interesting. Wow. I bet you were happy when it was over. You could eat what you loved.
Oh God, that's where I went back. I literally think I ate toast and hummus and oatmeal all on the first day. I was like, I just want oatmeal. So oatmeal and chia seeds. One of my favorite breakfasts is toast. Everybody knows I like toast, hummus, tomato, and black pepper. That's a go-to for me. on a 100% whole grain bread with no sugar, no oil. And just so we're clear, because people eat a lot of whole grain bread that's not sort of healthy. And then the other big choice I love to have is I love to have whole rolled oats, extra thick with the Red Mill brand, with some almond milk and chia seeds and blueberries. That's my other sort of go-to favorite breakfast.
Nice. What is the Four Roots Farm that you're the chief medical officer of?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So one of the things that life is funny, right? You think you know how the road is going to look until you start walking on it, and you start walking on it, and the road curves in places that are unexpected. So I've moved to Orlando, Florida, or Winter Park, Florida area, and in this area, we moved for my husband's job for the first time. 5 times he moved for me in 20 years, and it was my turn to move. So we moved here, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And by happenstance, I was connected to a person that ended up becoming my good friend and my boss of sorts. And he runs a nonprofit called John Rivers. He runs a nonprofit called the Four Roots Farm. And I am now the chief medical officer there. So what we do together is we're growing, we're learning about so many things, but the concept is that we've lost food. So what people don't know is that most of the soil in or the dirt in America is no longer soil. So it doesn't have that natural microbiota or the gut flora. I mean, the bugs rather in it that it should, that's natural and healthy, and that it's just dirt. It has almost no nutritional value. And so remember that the soil is super important, because healthy soil makes healthy plants, which makes healthy food, which makes healthy humans. And so we just have lost a lot of soil quality. And what other people don't know is that almost 50% of the food that we eat, including all of our fruits and vegetables, is imported, that we don't make it in the United States. And part of the problem is that there's so much food being made, but it's hard to get it to consumers. That's one issue. The other issue is that there's fewer and fewer farmers, because it's easier. Sadly, we don't support our farmers enough, and our farmers, it's easier to sell to a developer than to be a farmer these days, because there's so little income in farming, and there's so many difficulties in the farming world right now. And food quality, I mean, in terms of soil quality, stressors, bugs. And so at Four Roots, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do multiple things, but we're trying to educate the community about what healthy food is. We're trying to help farmers and help them promote healthy foods, and then also how bring those healthy foods to consumers. We're also working on how to improve food quality, which is where I come in as a scientist, to how to improve quality. Like, how do you make phytonutrient composition better? How do you make that quality of food better? Is it through the way the seed is made? Is it through the soil? Is it through the stressors? Is it through the water? Is it through all of those things? And then as you improve food quality, does that do a darn bit of difference to the patient or to the person who's eating it? If you improve the lycopene composition of the food, does it actually improve the patient, or do we just think it improves the patient? And so all of that scientific research in that spectrum, from how food is made to how it becomes and improves the patient, is the space that we're working in on the Four Roots Farm. Take a look. It's a really cool farm, and cool work we're doing on it in Orlando, Florida.
Nice. What does it mean to be a next generation innovator?
Yeah, I think that's a funny name. So some of the cardiology groups here have named me a next generation innovator, which made me laugh, because like, what exactly is that? The idea is that, I'm one of the newer generation of cardiologists that are focused on innovation. So focused on in my area of innovation is in food quality, food, and how to use food and lifestyle to improve cardiovascular disease.
Nice. I saw a question here about bread. Is rye and pumpernickel bread healthy like whole wheat bread?
Yeah, so typically most rye and pumpernickels are going to have a lot of more simpler grains in them. And so you want to be eating as whole grain as you can get. I particularly tell people just to focus on food like sprouted grain bread, like Ezekiel bread. is a great choice. It's probably one of the most ones that you can get nationally, but even better than an Ezekiel bread, I think, is if you can get something from a local bakery. So something very local that's fresh, that they've made, that has no sugar. You just have to watch, because they'll put sugar and they'll put molasses, and you got to watch Whole Foods, because I know we all love Whole Foods, but Whole Foods has a load of terrible bread. I have to tell you, I'm sorry to say it, but most of the bread that you get at Whole Foods has oil and sugar in it. But remember that most grocery stores, in order to keep the food on the shelf, and for it to last and to be made in a different location than brought to your grocery store and to sit on the shelf for several days or a week before it molds, it needs to have some sort of preservatives and processing in it. And so the best thing to do is go to a bakery, a local bakery that makes, uses no oil, no sugar, and no molasses, and get your breads there.
Yeah, we actually, I did a book signing on Saturday in our local Barnes and Nobles in Palm Desert. And a gentleman came up to me and gave me these 2 loaves of artisan bread. He's vegan. His bakery is vegan. And it's like, my husband said it was amazing. It was a sourdough bread, but it was like whole grain. And you could just see it looked healthy compared to fluffy bread.
Well, that's the key, is like, you can get you can get sourdough starters, and you can put those into, and use whole wheat in a sourdough starter. You get this most incredible bread. And it was a big COVID trend, as a lot of people became bread makers. And unfortunately, as COVID's gone away, good that COVID's gone away, but the bread trend is kind of going down again, because people are getting busy again. But people making their own bread at home, that's amazing. Totally recommend it. My husband has named all of our starters. We have a Squiggy, we have a Shirley, there was a Lenny. We have all sorts of bread starters. When they die, then a new generation is born, and we get Squiggy or Shirley or some other cartoon character.
That is very cool. Question: do you soak your oats?
How do I soak them?
Do you soak your oats?
So different times. Like, if I eat hot oats, I don't soak them. I just cook them. Or if I do steel cut oats, I just cook them slowly or use a pressure cooker. If I do like an overnight oat, I soak them in almond milk. I use almond milk, and I'm a very simple person. So my overnight oats compose of 3 things: almond milk, whole rolled oats, and chia seeds. And then the fruits I put on top.
Nice. Julie says, Ezekiel bread is not gluten-free. Do you have any suggestions for people that need to eat gluten-free bread?
Yeah, it's always a little trickier. So gluten-free is tricky, because when you have to remove gluten from foods, they've added often have to add a lot of sugar and fat to make it kind of palatable. So always a little bit trickier. I always suggest you go to your local breadery and ask them, because they'll make you breads with different that are not gluten-based grains that you can eat. So that's what I would encourage, because I don't have a brand that I would particularly encourage. Would you? I don't know.
This guy, Mark, if you can get to Palm Springs, I don't know much about it, but I think you're right. I mean, fresh is always going to be better no matter what the product is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of fresh, I think you're going to make a recipe from this book. I'm curious, are there some family favorites in this book that you might want to recommend?
So, I mean, the stir-fried udon noodles is always a hit. Any kind of hummus in my house is always eaten very quickly. Let's see. And then all of the Indian dishes. So, we eat a lot of Indian food in our house. So there's the aloo gobi, which is potatoes and cauliflower. There's a lentil dish in there, a dal dish, which all of those are always hits in my house. But even like the pancakes, the veggie pancakes with zucchini are also a big hit in our house, which is something that we all love.
You know what recipe I have earmarked? It sounds delicious, because I've never tried anything like this. You have a recipe for a curry coleslaw, and that sounds so good.
Yes. Also something that you would really like, because you put it into so many things. And I really like to eat salads, and I throw a lot of like coleslaw and flavored coleslaws and kimchi into my food. And so that would be a sort of a really nice thing to add to a salad. So highly recommend.
There's a question: if you toast your seeds and keep them in a grinder so they're digested rather than just passing through the body.
Yeah, so I keep my seeds in the fridge, the refrigerator, when the bag is open. And then when I'm about to use them, I take them and put them in a coffee grinder, and I grind just that days. I don't pre-grind because they do deteriorate over time. And so I just grind them the morning up, throw them into whatever I'm eating, and then use them. Now, flax seeds in general have to be ground. A lot of people think that chia seeds don't have to be ground. I'm not 100% sure about that, or if we know. It seems to me like if you grind them, you're going to improve the absorption. So in general, I grind them. The only time I don't grind my chia seeds is if I soak them with the oats, because they plump up. And I think that at that time you are able to absorb and break them down.
Yeah. Their chia seeds are if you grind them, do they still do that thickening thing?
No. So if you're doing like a chia egg or something like that, I wouldn't grind them. If you're going to use something to plump them up, you don't need to grind them. But if I put them in a shake or if I put them in hot oatmeal, I will grind them before I use them.
Makes sense. So Caesar is a very popular salad dressing, but in the real world, it's full of oil and cheese and salt and anchovies.
Yeah. Who wants to eat that nasty stuff? So we have a very simple vegan Caesar dressing. So I'm not very good at this. So let me see if I'm going to turn the screen first and show you in the cookbook. So here's my kitchen. So we're just going to make this really simple vegan Caesar dressing here. And the way we make it is we use tofu. And so I'm going to put you on, let me flip you back here. And so now we're in my kitchen. There we go. So I'm going to put everything. How are we visually? Is that okay?
Looks, I see your counter, your little nice block.
Okay, great. So I have my plants only block that Brian Hart made, Jane Esselstyn's husband. And so very simple, because again, I told you I'm really simple. All we're going to do is we're going to put these bad boys in a blender and we're going to make a dressing. So what you do is you take your tofu. And so I usually get like for this use, the only time I ever really use a silken tofu. So I find that desserts and dressings, I use a silken or a softened tofu or a really soft one versus I usually like firm tofu. But this is the only time. So this is from Publix, which is our local grocery store. And you need about a half a cup of the softened tofu. So I did a mise en place. I'm taking culinary classes. So I have learned what a mise en place is, which is when you pre-put out all of your food.
That's the secret, Dr. Aggarwal. I'm sure like when you were in medical school and you did surgery, all your tools, you didn't like go running here for the scalpel and running here for the sponge. They do mise en place in surgery. I mean, it's
you're absolutely right. And it's not something I've ever done for cooking. Again, I grew up in this Indian house and we just go like this and then kind of taste. But this culinary classes have changed my life because now my husband's always like, are you mise en placing? Yes, I'm mise en placing. So I do that a lot now, which has really helped. And I agree with you. It makes everything efficient. So I have here my half a cup of tofu. So that's a softened tofu. I'm just going to throw that into my blender. So I've got my Vitamix sitting next to me here. And then you need some apple cider vinegar. So I have 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar here. So that's right here in my little mise en place dish. So I'm going to throw that in. Again, very simple kind of gal. And then lemon. And you want to put in 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. So there's my lemon juice. You ideally would use a fresh lemon and you would do it. But if you don't have time, and today I didn't have as much time, so I just bought a little bit of lemon juice. So I have my lemon juice, which the only ingredient is lemon. So you put that in. And then you put in some white miso. So white miso, I'm a huge fan of miso because miso is a probiotic. And so I use a lot of miso. Eat a lot of miso soup, miso paste. It has so much flavor to me. I really love it. So I put the white miso here into my little measuring spoon. I'm going to put that in. So, by the way, these are my favorite measuring spoons for obvious reasons. You can see my heart. I don't know if you can see them. They're so beautiful. I love them. That was like a Williams and Sonoma.
We just got a question and I know the answer to it because we actually talked about this before we logged on live. I'm going to order her cookbook, but I would like to know if most of the recipes are on the simple side.
Yeah, so for me, they are simple. I'm all about simplicity. So if I have to get 50 ingredients from the grocery store, or I have to go to a unique grocery store to get them, I can't do it. Like I get overwhelmed. No. So if you're a gourmet cook and you really want sort of really advanced recipes, this may not be the best choice for you, if I'm being super honest, because it's going to have very good staples and really neat recipes, like a lot of Indian food. You're going to have noodles, but it's going to be for somebody who maybe wants to make a meal for their family on a regular basis and doesn't want to get stuck with the top 5 things that they always make, because you can make all of the meals in 20 to 30 minutes or less usually. A lot of easy sort of techniques. And so I think that's sort of the recipe that we're looking for. So, or at least that I was looking for. 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. Again, here's my mustard. Fan of mustards because they add that nice bite. In general, we'll put a lot of mustard recipes. Then I have some garlic powder. I should put some garlic powder. And we put 2 teaspoons of garlic powder in there. And then I just have a teaspoon, a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And there's my mise en place. I've already pre-done it because I wanted to be organized for you, because I'm not, I had to go away from my Indian roots and be organized. Not to say Indians aren't organized. It's just that maybe I grew up in this unorganized space. Okay, so just to review, it's soft tofu, lemon juice, white miso, Dijon mustard, garlic powder, apple cider vinegar, black pepper, and sea salt. It's all in there. All I got to do is cover my Vitamix, because we got to do that. And then I've got my Vitamix sitting next to me here. Let's see if I can not block it. Let's see if I can put that down here. I bet people are much savvier than I am. And then I just push this. It would be nice if I plugged it in.
Being Indian, did you ever use, before the Instant Pot, the stovetop pressure cooker? Oh, she probably didn't hear me.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I shouldn't have asked it right when the blender was going. I was saying, being Indian, did you ever use a stovetop pressure cooker before hearing about the Instant Pot electric pressure cooker?
Oh my gosh, I have such funny stories about the stovetop pressure cooker. I always thought I was going to die, because that thing sits on your stove and it goes. If you've ever seen one of those, we had this old style Indian one where this little thing sits there and it keeps popping. And my mom would always say, "Don't go too close. Don't too close," because she was always worried that thing was going to explode and pop off of me. So yes, that's what we used to use before we got the Instapot. Thank God for the Instapot. It's really changed my life. So super easy, right? We just blended it together until it was smooth. And check this out. So it's really just a nice flavor. I mean, a nice look and texture. And it tastes like Caesar dressing. It really does. And the reason it does is because we've added that Dijon mustard to it. And that tofu really makes it soft. So I already have a salad that I pre-prepared. I don't have all my ingredients in it, but I've got tomatoes and spinach in it. And this is going to be too much dressing for this salad. So I'm just going to put it in here. Just a few tablespoons.
And how long will that keep in the refrigerator?
That'll last at least a week. So I usually will put it in for a week. It'll be done before that, because I eat salad. I told you the Aggarwal salad is part of every single day in the Aggarwal household. Somebody told me I needed to create an app called WWAD. What would Aggarwal do?
That's great.
And that's so funny. We need one that says WWAJ. What would AJ do?
AJ, I know what AJ would do. Jackson wants to know if you personally add any oil or fat to your diet.
Yeah. So do I actively try to add oil and fat for my health? No. Do I eat some fatty foods? Like, I don't eat oil for my health. Whether there's some role for some oils is still in debate. That's why I would love to give you the data from my study, which is an olive oil based study. So I put people on our 100% plant-based diet that are on our standard diet. And then I've actually put them on a high olive oil arm for 4 weeks and then a low olive oil arm for 4 weeks. And I'm going to compare the difference in their clinical markers, their blood, their blood pressures, their lipids, their cholesterol, and also their stool. and I'm going to compare themselves so they are their own control, high olive oil versus low. So I'm super excited about it to see if there's any benefit to olive oil, right? Because anybody who's plant-based has heard, well, what about the Mediterranean diet, right? Well, so the Mediterranean diet is good, but remember, the studies show that the most pro-vegetarian of the Mediterranean diet are the people who actually do the best. And so the pro-vegetarian, so the most vegetarian Mediterranean diet people do the best. So if you think about that, then you think, well, and you look at all the studies show and asked, is a Western, they put people that were on a Western diet and they transitioned them to a Mediterranean diet, right? Mediterranean plus olive oil or Mediterranean diet plus extra nuts. And what they were able to show was that, yes, you do better. Well, okay, but does that mean it's as good as a plant-based diet or not? And the answer is, we don't know. I mean, we have a sense that the more vegetarian pattern is better, but is the oil itself what's good? Because people pour oil onto their food, olive oil in particular, because it's good for their health. And I don't think we know the answer to that. So I actually worked with the group that did the main olive oil studies, the Mediterranean studies, to create my study. And so when I did it, I asked them to help me design it to make sure I had done a good job. And so I'm really excited to see the results of my study. So hopefully by the end of May. So,
well, please come back and let us know, because it's such a hot topic in the plant-based community, whether it's healthy or not. What I don't understand, Dr. Aggarwal, is if there's something healthy in olive oil, wouldn't it be in the olive? So why not just eat the olive?
That's exactly right. So I think that olives are good for you in the sense that they have polyphenols, right? And so if you eat polyphenols, then you're going to do, if you eat things that are high in polyphenols, there's going to be benefit. But is it in this concentrated form of oil where you're getting so much of just concentrated fat? Is that outweighing the polyphenol or not? And that we just don't know. And anybody who tells you that we know for sure is wrong, because we don't. We have a suggestion that less oil is better, because there's a lot of animal studies that show that oils actually all cause plaque. So there's a lot of data to show that. So my suspicion is that my study is going to show that the low olive oil group does better. But I will tell you that the people from the Mediterranean study said they're going to show no difference, of course. But that's the beauty of science. You got to do the study and figure it out. And
maybe you could study some of my people that do the no oil and have for many years and seem to have healthy skin and hair and nails and healthy weight.
Well, they do, but the key is not to look at them in isolation, but is to compare them at different points to themselves, or and to compare them to other people. And that's the true way to do the best study. So when you ask that question about, do I add oil for my health? I don't. But do I have some oil in my food? Yeah. So if I like to eat avocados, so avocados have saturated fat in them and unsaturated fats. And so I do eat avocado, but some people can't eat avocado. And so I have some advanced heart disease patients with really high lipids that I can't let them eat avocado right now because their LDL is too high. So not everybody can eat those saturated fats, even if they come from plant-based sources, because saturated fat is not an optimal food choice. But I like avocado and I'm able to eat them. And there's some data on increasing HDL, which is good. So I do eat avocado, but not every day, or just a couple once in a while. And I like it to massage into my kale, because you remember the fats from the avocado help soften the kale. And then when I do an Indian chonk, which is when you do a saute of the onions, sometimes I'll add a tablespoon of oil. But I often will do it without, I will do a dry saute as well. So it depends on sort of if my kids are around, because they insist that there's a difference, although I can't tell.
TS is asking, for your consults, is it only with cardiac patients?
No, if you have a nutrition and lifestyle, if you want an intensive nutrition and lifestyle evaluation, I do a lot of those. My specialty is cardiology, but a lot of people come to me for a nutrition and lifestyle based consult, and I'm happy to do that as well. So there's the dressing. Can you see it? So it looks so nice. So it makes a lot of dressing. I think that's a lot of dressing. And so that'll last me at least 3 or 4 days. And again, I didn't add any oil to it. It was just tofu, lemon juice, miso, garlic powder, vinegar, and a little salt and pepper. And it's so creamy. I mean, it's just so gorgeous. No oil needed. I mean, I love it. I mean, you need oil a lot less than you think. A lot of patients tell me, well, the oil makes the taste. Does it?
No, it doesn't. It blocks the taste because it coats. That is exactly opposite is true.
Exactly right. And so oil doesn't add to the taste. So I think what people are missing, and the reason they think they need oil, is because it makes it softer and it makes the food softer, which is true. But you can get that softness from 1,000 things. Like I use hummus and balsamic vinegar very often as a dressing, or you can use the Caesar dressing that we just made, which is a very healthy, high nutritious dressing that you can use. And just look at the way the salad looks. And it's hard on Zoom maybe to appreciate it, but the salad, let's see if I can change my little thingy thing. There, let me look at that. I mean, it really is just a gorgeous, I don't know. I mean, I could eat those greens plain, but I really like the way the dressing looks. And I don't know if you can see it as well, but I have still yet to put in there some chickpeas, which are going to go in there because I love garbanzo beans. I'm going to put some red onions in that salad. And I'll probably, I might just leave it at that for today. Something a little simpler. But yeah, that's, I just like, I know it was a simple recipe. I could have made something fancier, but I don't know on Zoom, frankly. I think sometimes simpler is easier. And I really like the idea of making plant-based nutrition easy. And I want people to see that, yes, it is easy to go to McDonald's or to stop in at Panera Bread and pick up a quick sandwich. That is true. But I made this dressing and put this salad together in literally 15 minutes. And so that was getting it out of the fridge, opening the bag, putting together my little mise en place, using the blender. It was a 15-minute process, and it would take you longer to go out to Panera and wait for your food. So sometimes people forget that easy can be easy at home too. And that, it's okay to honor the process. And that's something I said to somebody yesterday, and they laughed and they said, gosh, I don't do that enough. And I think that that's true. We as humans, or as Americans, or 2022 generation, or whatever you want to call it, is we don't honor the process enough. There's something about the cooking, the process of putting together your meat, your pieces, your mise en place, mixing all the foods, making this. Like, I know the story behind how this dressing was made, and then I put it into my salad, and boy, am I going to enjoy this salad because I was part of the process of making all the parts of it. And there's a beauty to that. And I'm busy. I know you guys are busy. I know everyone's busy out there. But you'll be surprised. I will have saved time by making this meal and not lost time by making it, because it's super quick. And some basic ingredients: vinegar, tofu, lemon juice, half the stuff I have in my house all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Susanna says Body on Fire is an excellent book. I've listened to it on Audible, so I provided the link for both the cookbook and for the regular, and for the, for the original book and then the cookbook. Hey, if you had put recipes in the first book, you wouldn't have had to write the second book.
I know. Well, that was my fault, actually, because I'm such a nerd, and I was like, no, I just want it to be about the science. And it was my mistake, because I thought that it would confuse, it would become too long and overwhelming. And I really just wanted it to be about the science. But you're right. The feedback exactly but wait, I need recipes.
Right. Because you can't eat the science.
You can't eat the science. So I learned, again, it's a process of learning, and for all of us. And I definitely learned from that. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I should have done the recipes. Whoops. But it gave me a chance to add in that little how-to manual of how to eat day to day, which I was really happy to do, to really put in the grocery lists. And I wanted grocery lists, and I wanted sort of people to be able to look through and look at the list and say, okay, I need to increase my iron because I'm anemic. I have heavy menses and I'm anemic all the time. Well, what do I do to increase my iron? Or, oh, I have palpitations and I've been told I need to eat more magnesium. Well, what are the foods that have more potassium and magnesium? And then you can reach out to that list and try to incorporate those into your diet, because I have patients that come into me all the time with palpitations, and I say, well, you need to eat potassium and magnesium rich foods. And then they ask me, well, what are those foods? And I'm like, oh, I'm glad you asked, because now I have the list. So it's all those lists are in the book, and I'm proud of that. I think, I've often, we are our worst critic. And if you look, and you could say, well, could I have made more complex recipes? Yes, I could have. Could I have made, more unique tastes? Yeah, I could have, but I will tell you, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. And I wouldn't make any of the recipes because if it's too hard and too complicated for me, then I won't do it. And I guess maybe I think that people are more like me than the other way, and maybe I'm wrong.
I think people are more like you.
I just like it to be a little bit simple, and I want to know that I can walk into my kitchen, put together a quick thing, and done, and everybody's happy, and I can feed 3 kids and know that I nourished them and I gave them a good start for the day or the good meal for the night.
Nice. Jill says no avocado for heart patients, but what about limited nuts and seeds?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's a no for heart disease patients either, and it all depends sort of on everybody's body is different. So some people are able to eat avocado, even heart disease patients, and similar with nuts and seeds. So remember, nuts and seeds have some level of, some of them have saturated fats in them as well. And so sometimes I have to limit those in some patients, but most patients can eat them, especially seeds and nuts that are high in omega-3 fatty acid. I try to promote and support eating those. And so most of my patients eat them. Remember, I think that people forget that most people are eating this diet, and then you cut them down to a plant-based diet. And the nuts people often need the nourishment that you get from those nuts and seeds. And so often you're able to keep those into a standard plant-based diet, even for patients with heart disease. But there are people that have very bad lipids that I have some genetic components, et cetera, that I have to work really hard on. And those people, I often do have to limit their nuts. So it really is person dependent. And I know not everybody wants sort of a perfect diet for everybody, but there maybe isn't. But in general, eating a plant-based diet or eating mostly plants is optimal. But there will be some nuance depending on what your LDL is, how bad your heart disease is, if you're diabetic or not. And those things will all play a role into some adjustments in the dietary.
Great. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful presentation. And so wonderful book. I hope people will check it out because the recipes are simple. They're healthy. They're delicious. What more could people want? And if people live in California, Florida, and Maryland, right now are the 3 states that you can do telemedicine in.
Yeah. And if there are other states you want to send me a note through the website and say, hey, do this site, this state, I do add them up. And if it ends up being a decent number of people, then I will work towards getting that license. So it is important for me to hear from you. And if you want me to move forward with that state. So it is arduous to do, but it's worth it if people need it. And my life's mission, somebody asked me that this morning. I did another interview right before this, and they asked me, like, what is it that I hope to achieve? And it was an interesting question, but one that I reflected on. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I have 3 kids. I've worked now. I've sort of, what is it that I want? What I want to do is I want to move forward a mission. I want to make people healthy. I want them to see that there's hope. And I want them to see that they have power in their hands to heal their bodies. And there's so much you can do with the way you sleep, the way you think about things, the stress levels, what you put in your body. There's so much you can do. And so my mission is just that, is to move forward an agenda of healthier people, making people quality, teaching them about how to eat quality, how to live a quality life, and not focus on the age or the years or the time as much as having that time be important and help, and that's what I want to do. And I think it's about social connectedness and love and intimacy and joy and cutting anxiety and eating well and eating with people and laughing. I mean, there's just so many different parts and so many parts that we've forgotten that I think that I want us to get back to. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Now, do you also see patients in person if they live in the state that you live in?
I do. I do different things in Florida. So if you live in Florida and you're willing to drive, I do have people come from Naples and Miami, which are 3-4 hours away, or they come from as high as I've had people from South Carolina come down. And so if you want to drive down, I'm happy to see you, and I don't have to be licensed in your state. If you come to me, then I can see you. And I have people who've flown in from Brazil and other countries that will come in and see me. So that's very totally fine if you come to me. The difference is I just can't spend as much time with you because those visits are standard visits. So I do take insurance in that situation. So if you come to see me in the office, I do take insurance, but it's a standard cardiology visit. So I can't do like a nutrition and lifestyle intensive visit. And that's why I have that telemedicine practice. But I do another thing, which I do offer, which is these immersions where I have people who come in and I'll go help you in your house. I'll help you with your groceries. I'll help you clean out your cabinets. So we try to do different options for people to kind of get them, to give people different options.
Nice. Here's one question I just saw from Susanna. We can't get my husband's triglycerides down. LDL is coming down slowly. Weight is 10 pounds from target BMI. Will less fruit help?
Maybe. Some people are genetically predisposed to high triglycerides. Some people, there's an underlying cause, like their medication can cause their triglycerides to go up. Their blood sugars could be too high, which make their triglycerides go up. Their thyroid could be a problem, which should make your triglycerides go up. But if all those things are all normal and have been checked and okay, then typically, yes, it's just sort of figuring out that you're probably eating just too many carbohydrates and too many of those refined ones. And so remember, everything's about input and output. If your input is too much, then your output, then that sugar has to go somewhere, even if it is a complex sugar. And that sugar then will eventually become a triglyceride. So it's just something to think about. And so usually as that weight comes down and that input decreases and that output increases, those numbers will improve.
Great. Thank you. And there is a question from Krisha. Do you accept insurance? I
do accept insurance, but only in my general cardiology practice, which is in town in Winter Park / Orlando, Florida. So if you come to me, I do take insurance. Those are 15 to 20 minute visits. My telemedicine visits are not insurance based because, it's funny. You can't have a practice and offer people 1 hour long visits with an insurance-based practice. Sadly, it's sad. And that's a problem with the American medical system and the way payers are, but you just can't do it. And so, we always badmouth doctors. Doctors don't spend enough time, but they don't have almost a choice because we are incentivized to see patients every 15 minutes. So in order to do that, in order to really practice the way I wanted, I had to step out of that. And so in order to provide people with these longer 60 to 70 minute visits, I had to go with a non-insurance based model. So I don't take insurance with my telemedicine practice, and I'm okay with it. There's always a little bit of guilt, and you think, well, gosh, I'm missing people because I'm not taking insurance, but it's impossible to do. It's just impossible because you can't live your life and have your family and take care of your kids and do all the things that you want to do if you take insurance and then also have 70 minute visits. You just can't do it. And so I've just chosen to do it so that I can spend that quality time with my patients. It's funny, we're willing to pay for our dentists, and we're willing to pay for our vets, but we do have a problem, including myself. And I'm not saying that we don't like to pay for our doctors. And I get it. I also don't like to pay for my doctor, but it's been a change of mentality to remind myself that what I really want is quality medicine.
Wow. Well, thank you. And I bet you deliver it. I can just tell. You must be an amazing doctor. Well, thank you so much for writing this book, for the original book, and for your culinary presentation and your beautiful mise en place.
My mise en place.
Yeah. Joan says, how much is an hour-long visit? Do you mean it's an hour? I mean, she's asking the price, I think. Are you able to say that?
Yeah. So if you look on the website, it's drmonicaaggarwal.com, and you go to schedule appointment and book now, you'll see the sort of different options. But briefly, a 60 to 70 minute visit's $500. But there are different iterations, and depending on whether you're looking for more of that immersion experience. If you live in town, you can get sort of an immersion experience. Different options are available for people depending on what they want to do.
Great. Well, I would do it. I think it's so important if you're personally vegan or plant-based to have a vegan and or lifestyle medicine doctor on your team, especially if you have some condition.
I think everybody's got to do what they feel comfortable with. And I get it. I get the angst of money. And so I get it. Not everybody has the means. And like I said, it's been a personal journey for me as well to even charge. But unfortunately, in order to make my family work, there had to be some way to receive compensation for that amount at that time. And that's sort of the way it's become, I think. But I hope in the future, maybe 10 years from now, there'll be a focus on value-based care rather than acuity-based care, which is what we have now. We have an acuity-based care model. It's about seeing patients and getting people in, and the sicker you are, the more money we make as doctors and as hospitals. But I refuse to do that. I want to focus on value-based care, which is taking care of patients, making them better, not sicker, and not, it hurt me really when one of my partners, one of my friends in the industry, was called into the office of their supervisor, and they said, "What's happening?" Like, and this has happened to me before too, where people are like, "What's happening? All your, like you're seeing fewer patients, or you're not sending as many procedures." Well, we're not sending as many procedures because people are getting better. This is something you should be proud of, not something that we should be called into the office for, to be told, we're not delivering enough procedures. Our patients are getting better. They're quality patients that are healing, and they don't need to see us as often because they're better. I mean, how great is that? If that goes on my gravestone, I'll be okay with that.
Well, you know what they say, if you don't have the money for your health, you're going to need a lot more for your illness. That's for sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
That's the way it is. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And hey, I'd love to have you back just to talk about the research. I didn't know you were doing research. That would be really fascinating.
Yeah. So probably it's April. Probably by the end of May, it'll be completed. Another month for data collection. So hopefully by August or September, we should have data to publish. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, I think people would love to hear the results of that.
Yeah, happy to be back.
Great. Thank you so much. And good luck with the book. I hope everyone will buy it. I've been posting links, and buy it. What do you got to lose other than making delicious, nutritious, easy recipes that will help you quell your inflammation?
I love it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Aggarwal. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in about 90 minutes at 11 a.m. when my guest is PCRM cooking instructor Melissa Sherlock. We have another fabulous culinary demo. She will be making potato burritos with cilantro rice and a maple salted fudge.